Do too many of your flights end up with you plunging towards the ground, or angling steeply off to one side, losing control, spinning round, firing off a few rockets that miss their target before finally and definitely you lose control, crash into a rock and kill everybody on the helicopter? If so, then this tutorial series is for you. Over the next 6 or so videos, I'm going to be taking you from the absolute basics of helicopter flying to all the way through to some simple combat, then to some advanced flying techniques, and then to some advanced combat. If you're already a decent flyer, feel free to skip ahead to the later videos, but if you are a complete noob like I was a couple of months ago, then let's get started with your very first flight. So here we are, ready for our first flight. You're going to want to find yourself an empty server or a training server. If you're a member of a clan like Team Europe, then they have a very nice training server for you, but you want to find something empty, because there's nothing going to annoy people more than you trying to learn to fly on a packed server in the middle of a battlefield. So find yourself an empty server on a level like Caspian Border, Karg, or any of the ones that have helicopters, and try and find yourself an attack chopper. Attack choppers have these kind of rockets on the side. They're fairly large, but you don't want a transport helicopter, because that's the really big ones with like a big open space here for a person and a machine gun looking out, because they're quite hard. They're a lot harder to maneuver. They're kind of slower and sluggish, and also you don't want the little bird, which is a tiny little bubble hop copter, because we want something with a bit more power. So we're going to go for this attack chopper. So find yourself one of these and jump in. Now I'm going to be assuming that you're using the keyboard for the purposes of this tutorial. In part 2 I'm going to be discussing keyboard and mouse versus joystick versus controller, all that kind of discussion. But for this first part I'm just going to assume we're all using the keyboard and mouse to keep things simple. So when you're ready, increase your throttle, which on the keyboard is W, and up we go. I'm not touching the mouse at all. I'm not putting any directions on there in any way, shape or form, and you'll see that the helicopter actually holds pretty stable. And as I press S and reduce the throttle, down we come again. Now on the right hand side on the HUD, can you see that white bar, which is now getting bigger and now getting smaller? The little arrow that's next to it, which is now going up and now coming down, is my throttle. So that's my throttle up, that's my throttle down, and the bar itself is the height. So if you're ever wondering if you're about to crash into the ground, that bar will tell you. So at this moment I'm absolutely fine, miles off the ground, miles off the ground, miles off the ground, oh, getting a bit dangerous, oh I don't know, I'm not so sure, and let's pull back up again. Okay, so use that white bar to help you know how far you're off the ground, because if you are looking up at the sky, for example, it can actually be quite hard to know how high you are, and that bar can be a real lifesaver. Just be careful, because you can lose height very quickly if you're not in the right situation. Now, for the one thing I'd like to point out here is that when I throttle up and let go of the throttle, I'm not plummeting towards the ground. I'm not touching any throttle at all, and I'm staying pretty stable up in the ground. Sorry, up in the air, I should say. It's 102, 103. That little box there is telling me the height. So you don't need to be holding down the throttle all the time, especially while you're learning to fly, because if you hold the throttle down all the time, you're going to move a lot faster, which makes you harder to kind of navigate. So get yourself up in the air, a good height, over 100, so you're nowhere near the ground. And just got to practice just going down a little bit and up a little bit till you're comfortable with the idea that you could rise and fall, and then let go as well, and get used to that feeling of just kind of hanging in the air quite safely. Now we're going to be using the external view quite a lot, and if you're not sure how to do external view, you go options, key bindings, helicopter, and look to see what you've got chase camera, toggle chase camera set to. On my keyboard it's C, but I think I changed that from the default. And if you do use a mouse, if you do use a joystick or a pad, make sure you've got a control for external view here as well. I would absolutely recommend that eventually you don't use the external view much at all, but we are going to use it here to see how the helicopter reacts to certain things. Please notice as well, during that whole period of me fiddling with the keys, I did press the throttle, and my helicopter is still over 100 in the air, so we really don't need to be holding down the throttle all the time, because you'll end up ridiculously high. And here's my external view. Okay, and what we're going to be doing is We're not going to be using left and right. We're going to be using the mouse or the right stick of your controller, which controls our pitch and our roll. And if I move it forward, I pitch forward. If I move it backwards, I pitch back. If I move it left, I pitch left. I roll left, sorry, and if I move it right, I roll right. Now this is important, and this is what we're doing in this first tutorial, because the mouse, this pitching and rolling, is what keeps our helicopter stable and keeps it safe. So if we can master this idea of getting the helicopter sturdy and kind of stable in the air, you're going to be safe, and you're going to stop those nasty crashes by plummeting off and not being able to stabilize your helicopter like that. Okay, now when you've got the throttle on, or when the throttle is fairly high, you're going to get pulled towards the blades, pulled up towards the blades. So if we tilt the helicopter forward by pitching it, it's going to pull us forward, and that's actually how we move forward. If we tip the whole thing back, it's going to pull us back, and that's how we slow down or even go backwards. If we pull it to the left, obviously we then move to the left, and if we put it to the right, we move to the right. Notice I didn't say turn right, but move to the right. And this actually gives us, as a flyer, quite a lot of manoeuvrability, because we can actually, by pointing the blades at different angles, move in lots and lots of different directions. So what I'd like you to do before you start fiddling with turning left and right or firing your missiles or anything like that, just get used to just getting your helicopter in the air and tilting it in various angles, putting the throttle on, putting the throttle off, and just getting yourself moving. So I'm going to tilt it forward, and I'm going to move forward. I'm going to tilt it back, and I'm going to stop and then move backwards. And just get yourself used to moving around without overturning, because there is a point where if you start to turn too far, you start to lose control. And it's somewhere around there. If I go too much further than that, the helicopter's going to really veer off quickly to one side. I'm going to struggle to get it back. So don't go as far as that. Keep it to within maybe a 45-degree angle, so you've got good control over your helicopter at all times. Now, one thing you do need to notice here is that when I point the helicopter forward, which is making me move forward, I'm also losing height. Okay, I'm losing height quite slowly, but I am going down and down and down. And if I change to the inside view, you will see here, if I point it down, I am losing height as I go. I'm just going to turn my helicopter around, so I'm running out of map. Don't you worry about how to do that at the moment. But you don't have to be plummeting all the time if you are moving forward. If I put the nose of the helicopter down to about there, you'll see that I'm moving forward, and I'm moving forward fast, but I'm not losing height, or maybe one here or there. So you need to learn this angle. This is the going forward without losing height angle, basically. Okay, and it's, if you look on the screen display there, it's between 10 and 15. You see those numbers going past as I move the nose of the helicopter up and down? It's like about 12-ish, somewhere around there, where you can just move forward without going down. And that works whether I was really, really high up in the air, and it also works whether I'm quite low down here as well. You know, if I can get pretty low down, get the angle just about right between 5 and 12, and I can just about hold my height consistently. See, there it is, holding my height even though I'm low to the ground. So that's all I want you to do for this first tutorial. Don't worry about turning, don't worry about like maneuvers, don't get too near the ground. Just get used to rolling and pitching the helicopter in different directions. Maybe if you want, you could set up a few accidents where you go too far and practice getting out of it and recovering it by holding down that throttle and pulling yourself back the other way. Because most kind of like newbie accidents happen by not being in control of the roll and pitch of your helicopter. Okay, so get used to this movement, and in part 2 we will talk about how to really turn corners fast, and we'll talk about controllers and all that kind of stuff. So I will see you once you have perfected rolling and pitching in part 2. Thanks a lot. Take care.